Okay. Hi, I am Bethany Tucker, and for the next few minutes, I would like for us to talk about effect size specifically for higher education. Okay. Effect size is a precise way of measuring the effectiveness and strategies of life influences. We have all asked ourselves, is this approach that I'm using effective? Is it not effective? Well, there is research that tells us whether or not we are using an effective approach or if there's another approach that is perhaps more effective. Now, you'll notice that we will be talking about strategies that teachers K through college can use in the classroom. But we'll also be talking about life influences, things that just happen to us, that just happen to our students. But they play a very critical impact as well. The research that we will be referencing is the research of effects across a meta analysis. The researchers spent years, along with colleagues and doctoral students, analyzing the effect of various strategies and life influences on students. Now, if we look at this scale, we can, of course, realize that a strategy or a life influence that has no effect has an effect of zero. This means that if this happens to the student all day, if I use effect sizes with an effect size of zero, then my students will be no better off at the end of the year, at the end of the semester, than they are at the beginning. And of course, this is what we want to avoid. Now, there are many effects that are much greater than zero, many strategies that we can use that have an effect size much greater than zero. And there are some that actually have a detrimental effect. The reality is that if these events occur in a student's life over and over on a daily basis, that student could actually lose ground, could be worse off at the end of the year than at the beginning. The researcher who put this together, his name is John Hattie. Other researchers have studied effect size, but Hattie's is the one that is most well known, and he calls these effects the disasters. Now, these disasters apply to all students, but as we could only imagine, some of these disasters are squared by poverty. In other words, these disasters are much more disastrous for a student from poverty. For example, mobility. If we have a student who moves during the school year, this student could be middle class, this student could be wealthy, this student could be from poverty. The effect of mobility on the average is negative 34, which is huge. This means that the student's life has been thwarted, the student's growth has been thwarted by simply moving. But again, let's think about this. If I am a student from a classroom where the parent has the time and the wherewithal to say, we're moving, there's a zoo in the community, you'll meet new friends, then the negative impact would be much less than if I have a parent who says, "Here's a pillowcase, put out whatever you want to keep in the pillowcase. We have to be gone by in the morning." So we can see that even though negative 34 is negative, that is the average. So the negative impact for some students would be extremely great, much greater than negative 34. 0.40, according to John Hattie's scale, is the average effect size. If I could use strategies in my classroom day in and day out that have an effect size of 0.40, my students will be right on mark to make one semester's worth of progress in one semester. That's great. But as we can see, there are some numerals much higher than 0.40. And our goal is to select strategies that fit into the greater than average category. John Hattie calls these the winners. for obvious reasons. And an effect size of 1 is one standard deviation above the norm, which means that a student can actually make 2 years progress in 1 year when they are taught with these with strategies with this effect size. Oops. Okay. I went the wrong way there. I apologize. Now, the influence with the greatest reported effect of 1.62 could affect students by as much as 3 years in one, 3 years above and beyond the average effect. One strategy that we will talk about in just a minute is having students report their grades. If we say to a student, tell me what you expect to earn in this class. And of course, we need to make it very formal. We would say, write down your name, write down the name of this class, and predict what you think you will earn. This has a hugely positive effect because it gives students a future story. Every time they walk into the classroom, they're thinking, gee, I predicted a B in this class. Maybe I should listen. And the researchers also warn us that um, boys in particular will overestimate their ability. So they might predict themselves making an A. Researchers tell us, let it go. We just let them predict an A because still this gives them a future story. And if they're on the road to making a B, we can say, look at how close you are. What could you do to increase your progress? Or you could say, that's awesome. You're up from a C last semester to a B now. So there are many ways that we can use this one particular um, strategy within the classroom. And again, it has one of the highest effect sizes. Now, looking at this, I want you to think for just a moment. Which of these strategies on the right-hand side of the column do you think would have an effect size of 0.40? Which one is average? Many of these apply to the college level as well as other grade levels. The average one on the list is cooperative learning. Cooperative learning is a great strategy to use with students. It can help us to make average progress. Now, which one would have an effect size of 0.01, which means that it is a loser, it's a disaster. It is open instruction. Now, we don't see this very often at the college level, but we do know that sometimes we make an attempt to teach everything with underneath the rubric of let's all go out into the commons area and learn about life. Researchers tell us that this is not as effective as some of the other approaches that we can use. Another disaster is whole language. This is not a college concept, but matching styles of learning is something that we don't need to spend time on. We're not saying it's a bad thing. We're simply saying it is not worth the effort. If we teach matching the variety of learning styles, that's really all that we need to do. 0.39 matches with mobile phones. Trying to teach using mobile phones is not typically an effective approach. Now, looking at above average approaches, 0.47, small group instruction is important, but it is even more important for your students from poverty because if you tell me that you want me to think about what I know about this topic, if I don't know anything, I haven't learned anything from uh, engaging in that activity. But if you put me in a small group, then we can talk, and this is something that can benefit me. Next up, we see service learning. Service learning has many positive benefits, not just cognitively, but emotionally as well. Even higher, appropriate feedback, and appropriate feedback includes telling the students where they are, where they were, where they want to be. Students predicting their grades has an effect size of 1.3, and the influence with an effect size of 1.62, teacher estimates of achievement. And this doesn't mean that the teacher estimates how well their students do. It means that they estimate how well they themselves have done. And that's the absolute highest. So on Hattie's effect size scale, what is the average score? If you said it is 0.40, you are absolutely right. Now, a question. Why are Marzano's ratings different from Hattie's? And if you're familiar with effect size, you know that they are different. They are different because Marzano studies the branches of a tree, where Hattie studied the entire tree. Marzano only studied strategies. Hattie studied strategies and life influences as well. So that is what causes the difference in their scores. And again, it is analogous to studying the tree versus analyzing one branch of the tree. So again, in summary, effect size is a more precise measure of the effectiveness of strategies and life influences.